So let's dive into this. Imagine it's late December, right? And for weeks now, people have been seeing these strange lights, like darting across the sky over Langley Air Force Base.
Langley Air Force Base, wow.
Yeah, and we're not talking about just, your average blinking lights in the distance.
Right.
These are like formations of small, unidentified flying objects, and they're zipping around with like crazy maneuverability.
Something out of a movie.
It really does. It really does. You've got a stack of articles on your desk about this stuff. It's like way more interesting than any sci-fi movie marathon I've ever seen. So we're talking about a real life mystery here, and we're gonna, dive in, figure out what we can.
Let's do it.
What we know for sure is that these weren't just, your average blurry lights in the sky. We're talking about multiple witnesses, experienced folks too, who described these objects in detail, like really specific details.
Yeah, the witness testimonies are, I think, what makes this case so interesting, because it's not just vague shapes, right? We have people reporting, like you said, formations, patterns in how the lights on these objects are flashing. It's really specific stuff.
Wow.
And that level of detail, it suggests something organized, something potentially technological. And that's what has a lot of people kind of scratching their heads right now.
Yeah, and get this. The Air Force was so baffled by this whole thing, they actually called in NASA for help.
Whoa.
We're not talking about just like, the local police department here. This is the big leagues, right?
Absolutely. It's not every day you see NASA getting pulled into something like this. And they even deployed, some serious hardware like the WB-57F.
Now, what is that?
So that's essentially a flying laboratory, right? It's got all these high-tech cameras and sensors designed to study, well, everything from atmospheric conditions to, unidentified objects.
Interesting.
So the fact that they used that tells you they were taking this situation very, very seriously. Wow. This wasn't just your average, someone saw a drone kind of thing.
Right.
This was the real deal.
So, okay, we've got the Air Force. They're trying to figure it out. NASA's involved. Meanwhile, you've got some people out there, right, throwing out these even wilder theories. I'm talking about like motherships,
Motherships.
Yeah, like Chris Mellon, he's a former Pentagon official. He actually suggested that these swarms of objects, they might actually be like launched from this larger, even faster craft. Like imagine this thing just hiding up there,
Hiding in plain sight. Wow. Okay, so, that's a pretty wild theory.
It is.
But I will say, it's worth noting, this wasn't an isolated incident. Similar events were reported around the same time over in Palmdale, California.
Palmdale, okay.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Palmdale is home to Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works.
Skunk Works, what is that? Like, were they...
So Skunk Works is basically a nickname for this, like, super secret research facility, right?
Okay.
And they develop some of the most advanced aircraft in the world over there. It's very hush-hush.
So we've got these unidentified objects. They're buzzing around a top secret military base.
Right.
And then they decide to show up near a place where they're developing, like, top secret aircraft.
It's pretty bold.
It really makes you wonder, Like, was somebody trying to, like, send us a message? Or maybe even do a little, recon, check things out? Like, are we talking about, like, next level espionage here?
That was certainly one of the theories floating around.
Really?
Oh, yeah. People were talking about it. But here's the thing. The folks who actually study espionage, intelligence gathering, all that for a living,
right,
they weren't entirely convinced.
And why is that?
Well, think about it. Imagine let's say you're a foreign power and you're trying to steal military secrets, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
Would you send a fleet of, like, glowing, flashing aircraft to do your dirty work? Yeah.
Probably not the stealthiest move.
Exactly. Espionage, it's all about, like, being invisible, right? You want to be a ghost, gather your intel without anyone knowing you were ever there.
Right, blend into the shadows kind of thing.
Exactly. These displays over Langley and Palmdale, not exactly subtle.
Not at all. Okay, so if we're saying these weren't like alien spaceships and they weren't foreign spies trying to snag some top secret blueprints, what were they?
Well, some experts out there, they think these events might have been staged.
Staged? Like a hoax?
Yeah, exactly. We're talking like a carefully planned thing.
Right.
To make it look like something truly extraordinary was happening.
Okay, hold on. I'll buy into a lot of things. But a staged event, like with advanced tech and witnesses and even fooling the Air Force, that seems a little far-fetched, even for like a good conspiracy theory, doesn't it?
I get it. I do. But it's not as crazy as it sounds. We're talking about folks like John Hedesco. He runs that mobile lab.
Yeah.
affiliated with Harvard's Galileo Project. And then you've got Richard Hoffman. He's an IT specialist, works at the Army's Redstone Arsenal. He's done a lot with counter-drone stuff. These folks, they know they're unidentified objects, you know, and the tech behind them.
Okay, so they're plugged into this world for sure. So what makes them think it was staged? Like, what are they seeing that maybe everyone else is missing?
Well, they point to certain things about the sightings, little details like the engine noise that some people reported hearing.
Engine noise.
Yeah, and the altitude these objects were supposedly flying at, even like the speeds.
Okay, I'm following. So how do those details scream like, hey, this was all staged?
All right, so take the engine noise, right?
Yeah.
Some people say they heard this humming sound, like a buzzing. And Tedesco and Hoffman, they're like, that's not typical. Like, if we're talking top secret aircraft or, you know, let's be honest, spaceships.
Right. Got to factor in those spaceships.
Exactly. Advanced propulsion systems, they probably wouldn't sound like that.
So they're saying these were drones, but what about those drone busters we talked about, those anti-drone systems? Wouldn't those have, like, taken care of them if that's all they were?
You're right. If it was your average run-of-the-mill drone, yeah, probably. But what if? And I'm just saying, what if someone somehow had access to tech that could make it seem like a drone? The noises, the lights, the whole deal. But it was something else entirely.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. But even if someone had that kind of tech, who would even have the resources to pull something like this off? And why Langley?
Those are the million-dollar questions,
Yeah.
right? And honestly, we don't know. Not yet, anyway. But Hoffman, he brings up a whole other layer to this whole thing.
Another layer. Don't tell me there's more. Seriously, another layer. I'm starting to think complex is like the official word for this whole UFO thing, you know?
Right. It really does seem that way. But in this case, the complexity that Hoffman's talking about, it's all about how we respond to incidents like this, especially when we don't know what we're dealing with.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What makes it so complicated?
Well, imagine, you know, the chaos that this caused. Unidentified objects, they're flying around a major military base.
Panic, probably.
Yeah, everyone's freaking out, trying to figure out what to do. But then the question becomes, who's in charge?
Yeah, who do you even call Ghostbusters?
Right, like, who gives the order to, say, shoot these things down?
Yeah.
Is it the Air Force? The Department of Defense?
What about the FAA, since it's...
Exactly.
Right.
Airspace.
Right.
They got to have some say, right?
Right.
So it's not just, can we even stop these things? But who has the authority to even try? Talk about a mess.
A total logistical nightmare.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think, you know, because we're talking hypersonic missiles these days, AI-powered drones, who knows what else is out there. Are we really ready to deal with something we don't even understand?
It's a little unsettling when you put it like that. Okay, so let's take a step back for a second. Big picture. We've got these unexplained events, right? Langley, Palmdale. Multiple witnesses, details that don't add up. The Air Force is stumped. They call in NASA. It's like X-Files stuff, but it's real life.
It really is.
So what's the takeaway? Are we any closer to knowing what actually happened?
Honestly, we might never know for sure. Could have been advanced drones. Maybe it was a hoax. Or something else completely.
Something else, right.
That's the thing about this field. It keeps you guessing. But even without a clear answer, what this whole thing shows us, I think, is how much we don't know.
We like to think we've got it all figured out.
Right. But there's still stuff happening in our own skies that we can't explain.
So where does that leave us? We stocking up on tinfoil hats?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, good. Because I don't think those would really, you know, do much good.
But I don't think we should ignore it either. This and everything else like it, it tells us we got to stay curious. Question what we think we know.
Keep an open mind.
Exactly. Because there just might be more out there than we realize.
Sometimes the most interesting discoveries are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers, right?
Absolutely.
Who knows? Maybe someday we'll have the tech, the understanding, and we'll crack the code on all these UFOs.
That would be something.
But for now, the mystery remains. And that's it for this deep dive. We'll be back next time with more strange stories, baffling accounts, and who knows, maybe even a few answers. Until then, keep looking up.